There are more than 9 million minority-owned firms in the United States, and despite that, just a tiny handful get federal contracts. With new promises from the Biden administration to improve federal contracting access for minority-owned businesses, it does beg the question, will black and brown business? National Correspondent Bofta Yimam explains, if history tells us anything, those that want a fair shake will have to fight for it. We're fighting again, Bofta. Good morning.
Good morning, Sharon. Many folks may not realize federal procurement is the largest consumer of goods in the world, and minorities landing contracts could help bridge the racial wealth gap. But some say that's only if compliance and oversight are part of the solution. In tiny towns across America, you'll find minority-owned contractors like Jimmy Dillahunt Jr. making his way into his favorite seat.
I was raised in the business and I've grown to love the business.
Dillahunt co-owns CADET construction company, which got going 8 years ago and set the foundation for lucrative federal contracts.
Our primary focus is infrastructure, site work.
Now Dillahunt offers to share a thing or two.
It's really not an equal playing field.
If you'll listen.
I've found a lot of exclusionary practices when it comes to bidding a contract. There's a lot of barriers to entry that are put up so minority businesses cannot compete on these federal contracts.
Dillahunt says about a third of his revenue is driven by federal contracts. While most experiences were positive, he says working with the FAA left him with a bad taste.
I'm 100% sure that race definitely played a role on both projects.
But Dillahunt says his experience speaks to a larger problem: systemic cracks, unfair treatment of minorities who do manage to land a federal contract.
It's unfortunate because I've seen a lot of businesses be negatively impacted severely by really what I would call a financial lynching, in my opinion.
The Minority Business Development Agency released this 93-page review of 100 existing disparity studies. It found that every study identified contracting disparities and pointed out key barriers arising from discriminatory behaviors, like agency and prime contractors employing capability stereotypes, double or higher standards, and manipulating bid processes based on prejudicial factors. The review suggested adding innovative policies, including research into real ramifications for a firm that engages in discriminatory behavior and is caught. Plus, research into whether agencies have been effective at implementing common policy prescriptions. Federal procurement records show the government paid a consulting firm more than $95,000 for that 2016 review. No telling what came of it. The MBDA tells BNC it hasn't done a study since then, and the challenges still persist today, says Wendell Stemley with the National Association of Minority Contractors.
The venom and the aggressiveness towards African Americans is like I've never seen to the level people are willing to go to make sure they are not employed or not utilized as contractor, vendors, or suppliers.
Stemley says one major challenge: 50% of states don't comply with inclusionary goals of the federal government, including contractor requirements. Depending on the agency, he says African American contractors traditionally may receive just 2% or less of the dollars allocated to them.
They don't need to write new laws. They just need to enforce the laws that are already exist.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration hopes to raise the bar with more dollars.
I'm going to increase the share of the dollars the federal government spends to small disadvantaged businesses, including black and brown small businesses. Right now it calls for 10%. I'm going to move that to 15% of every dollar spent will be spent for that.
The administration says it will assess tools to lower barriers, and Congress has a role to play to make the process more inclusive, too.
And there'll be no doubt that this would be an important opportunity to ensure fairness, and we will not take a step back for fairness.
A lot of states and local jurisdictions will administer these funds, and that's where the local elected officials have got to come in and ensure that African American contractors and Hispanic contractors get a piece of the action.
Dillahunt says he may apply for federal contracts rolling out under the new administration's plans, but this time he'll be more selective on which opportunities, creating his own blueprint of what to expect.
And that's why I said on the face it looks great, but if there isn't some closely monitoring to make sure that a minority contractor or subcontractor is going to be treated fairly and in accordance with the contract, it really you know, it really diminishes the grant opportunity.
Now, we did ask the FAA about Dillahunt's allegations. It says the contract was terminated through a mutual agreement and would not go into any further detail. Sharon.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more to uncover there. Great job, Bofta. But speaking of the FAA, any idea on how many minority-owned businesses land those lucrative contracts in comparison to others?
Sharon, what we have learned is that in 2020, minority-owned businesses represented about 23% of all FAA contracts awarded. That's about a 3% drop, we learned, compared to the previous year. Now, the FAA says they are fully committed to being fair and inclusive, and that they have improved policies and collaborations to increase participation for disadvantaged businesses. We'll, of course, do a follow-up on this story and be sure to keep everyone posted.
Yeah, we got to keep him honest, because he talked about that financial lynching. He talked about landing the contract, Bofta, and then what happens next? How are they treated within it? Great job, as I said. Bofta Yimam for us live in Washington. Thank you.